Hello there, people of YouTube. This is Jolt109, and I am bringing you Chapter 4 of Silent Ponyville. This is actually a long one. I think this might be the longest part, actually. It's 37 minutes, so go get yourself a meal or some snacks or something. And I wish I had a bag of chips with me, but I ate it last night, and I should have saved it for recording now, so I could just... Anyways, I keep messing up on that front. Anyways... Let me just get it started, because this could take a while to make. So, here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Silent Ponyville. Chapter 4. I'm gonna make sure that this thing is good as can be. Finally got that new do.
The world was quiet. Her hair floated around her face. She didn't feel the sting of her wounds here. Everything felt the same like this. It seemed almost as if her cares were a mile away.
What?
The last of her oxygen left her mouth and flew past her face. Her lungs began to burn. She wanted to hold on for a little longer, but her body defied her. Pinky gasped, taking in a huge breath of air as she surfaced from the bucket of water. She panted heavily as she tried to relax and calm her beating heart.
What?
She had just survived, staring death in its face. That thing. That monster.
Slendermane?
Slender pony. She knew just getting close to it was a death wish. When it had gotten close, her mind had fallen into a haze unlike anything she'd ever experienced before. Then there was the head-splitting pain. She gingerly touched her rewrapped head wounds. The cuts from the attack in her room had started to heal, but the slender pony had left a deep gash down the middle of her forehead. But she'd survive. The cut only stung a little now, and that would fade soon. The bandages on her leg had also needed to be changed. All that running had reopened the bite wound, and her leg was throbbing as it recovered. She shook her head and mane, casting the water off of her head. That soak had relaxed her some, but she was still inside of that school. The school where she had been chased inside of that. The only word that came to her mind was an other world. One that was separate, yet almost the same. She lowered her head and started gulping down the bucket of water. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was at first, but she remembered how much crying and running she'd been doing, and suddenly her throat felt as dry as a desert. She quickly emptied the bucket of its contents. She softly sighed as she pulled her head back up, and looked around at the empty cafeteria she was in. She was able to imagine back when it was in pristine condition, all the little foals that would gather around, eating lunch as they took a break from their day of learning. Friends would share gossip stories, adventures in the games they were playing at home. Some would doodle, some would spend time by themselves, but lunchtime and recess were always the foals' favorite part of school.
Of course.
Those days are long gone in this place, aren't they?
Pinky sighed as she stared at the empty, dust-covered room. The tables had been empty and abandoned for a long time now, and no foals visited these halls. Even the brief glimpse at the playful ghost foals had gone away, and left the empty silence. She took a soft breath and picked up the red ribbon. She had taken it off to soak her head. She gently tied it into a bow at the end of her mane once more. She was growing very fond of this ribbon, not only being a gift from Gummy. It seemed to give her a sense of normalcy during these calm moments. It seemed to put her mind at a bit of ease, just knowing it was there.
I guess all that's left to do now is open this box.
She said, looking at the brown box that sat next to the bucket. She hadn't looked inside of it. In fact, she had wanted to leave it there. Even more, she wanted to smash it. She wanted to destroy the box. Anything that slender pony had to offer just made her stomach twist in anger. But forces beyond her understanding compelled her to bring it with her. She had put it down to get some water, and now that she had finished it, it sat there mocking her. She carefully lifted open the brown lid, half expecting it to burst into fire upon her touching it. The lid slid off easily as she looked inside it.
Well, why is this in here?
She said as she stared in shock at what sat inside the box. It was the key to Sugar Cube Corner.
Why would he have this? Why would he give it to me?
The questions racked Pinky's mind. After all, her home was right above Sugar Cube Corner.
I can't believe I forgot to check on the store itself.
She looked at the key again, then remembered what she had seen in her room.
No.
Yeah, weren't you already there?
I can believe I didn't check it. Not after that filly attacked me. I did want to get out of there as quickly as I could.
She carefully picked up the key and placed it in her bag.
I guess.
She had to go back and find out what happened to Sugar Cube Corner now.
I mean, you were already there. How did you not check it? Even before going to your room?
The snow
That's
had
what I would've
started to
done.
pile up thickly at her hooves. The town looked like it had a white blanket covering it. Every part of the town had snow on it. The streets, the roofs, and the trees. Pinky had never seen the town covered in the snow this way before. There had always been ponies that made sure the town was still usable during the winter, clearing the streets and making sure the snow didn't pile up too quickly. Each step gave a crunch in the snow as the cold ground sank underneath her. She shivered even more now, wishing she had brought some winter clothes to keep warm. Normally she did well in the cold, but the snow kept wetting her coat. She could feel ice starting to form at the base of her legs.
Ooh.
Sugar Cube Corner finally came into view. She sighed in relief. She had seen groaners in the distant fog, but none had come close to her. She had managed to make it here, only suffering from the cold. She went up to the door of her favorite bakery and gently tried to open it. The door was locked, as she had expected. So even if she had tried to check on it earlier, she would have just had to move on. She carefully pulled the store key out of her bag and placed it into the lock, unlocking the door. Pinky watched as the key turned to ash, just as the school key had before it. She let out a soft sigh as she pushed open the door, stepping inside. As she had expected, Sugar Cube Corner was dark, just like her room had been. Scant amount of light entered the room as she looked around. She quickly reached into her bag, pulling out the lantern. She was thankful she had refilled it with the oil back in the cafeteria as she set the flame alight. To her surprise, Sugar Cube Corner looked fine. There were no pastries on the shelves or counters, but there was a lack of dust and decay. In fact,
So it was empty?
the place was even decorated. There were ribbons and banners and balloons set up all around the shop. There was a table set up for holding snacks and punch, several games placed in various locations, as well as a pile of presents on another table. There was a banner tied from one pole to another, above it all, that read, "Welcome, Pinkie Pie."
Are these decorations for me?
Pinkie asked, placing her lantern down on a table so it could illuminate the room.
Ooh! Do we have a guest? I love guests!
Came a voice that sounded all too familiar.
Oh.
Pinkie stopped as she looked around. She hadn't heard any pony's voice since she'd entered this horrible place, and she was suddenly filled with hope.
Yes! You do have a guest! It's me, Pinkie Pie.
Pinkie Pie quickly called out excitedly, wanting to meet the other pony right away.
Oh, really?
This is gonna suck
I'd really like to
ass!
see your face.
She didn't care that the voice seemed to sound familiar. She just wanted to
It's
see
your
the thing.
voice!
Okie dokie Loki. Since you asked so nicely.
A blob of darkness in the corner of the room began to move. It seemed to manifest into the form of a pony before Pinky's eyes. The shadows surrounding the pony faded as light soon gave her a form.
What's the matter? You seem surprised to see me. You said your name was Pinkie Pie, right? What a coincidence! My name's Pinkie Pie, too.
There was no doubt about it. The bright pink coat, the frizzed-up curly mane and tail, the blue and yellow balloons for a cutie mark, the bouncing, bubbly attitude. It was Pinkie Pie.
But that's going to get confusing if we both start calling each other Pinkie Pie. We should give you a nickname.
Oh.
What? But I'm...
Pinkie couldn't think of anything to say. Why was there two of her? And this Pinkie didn't seem to be suffering at all from any sadness or despair. She wasn't covered in any bandages, and she didn't look hurt. This Pinkie looked exactly like she did before the nightmares had started to affect her. And this town wasn't helping her.
Oh, I see your hair is down. Does that mean you're sad? You must be. The only time my hair goes down is when I'm sad. We can call you Sadie Pie.
Oh,
Why
what?
are you so sad, Sadie Pie? Did someone steal your sweets? You can always make more, you know. Oh, I know what'll turn that frown upside down. Let's have some cupcakes.
I fucking knew it!
Cupcakes? But I want to get out of this town. Aw, you want to go? But you only just got here.
Happy Pinkie Pie said, tilting her head.
Come on, there's so much fun for us to have.
She bounced over to a door on the side of Sugar Cube Corner, one that led to the basement. She opened the door,
God, no!
then turned back around.
No!
Come on, follow me. We'll have lots of fun. Then we'll make those cupcakes.
The happy Pinkie Pie bounced into the darkness of the stairs. Pinkie just stared in disbelief as the second Pinkie disappeared from sight.
Oh my god.
She couldn't believe her own eyes. Surely she was the only Pinkie Pie. Right? She had to find out why there was a second Pinkie Pie. She grabbed the lantern and slowly began to follow down the stairs to the basement. She could hear the constant giggling of herself far down in the darkness. For some reason, she might have preferred the silence. She hit the bottom of the stairs and looked up, expecting to see the basement. Instead, there was a long hallway before her, with a series of 4 wooden doors along it, with a final wooden door at the end.
Come on, let's play already.
The chipper voice
How about
echoed
no?
throughout the hallway. Pinkie couldn't tell which direction it had come from. She slowly walked up to the first door and opened it, entering slowly. Inside the room, she was shocked as she saw the familiar living room from the farm.
The what? Huh?
Here. You should eat something.
The ghostly image of her father had placed a bowl of soup before a ghostly image of her younger self, wrapped in a blanket.
I'm not hungry.
Her younger self had softly muttered in response. She bundled herself up tighter into the blanket.
You haven't eaten anything since you got back. Please. You have to eat.
Her father sat down on the couch next to his daughter.
I don't ever want to eat again.
Young Pinkie said, her voice quivering with fear. Her father placed his head around his shaking daughter, holding her close to his body. The images faded away. The room was quiet as Pinky stared at the images she had just seen.
Was that a memory?
It wasn't a memory she could remember. The words her father had spoken felt ominous, but she couldn't think of why they would seem that way. She saw something out of the corner of her eye, looking down on the table where the soup had been placed. On top of it was a green tile with the image of a cat on it. She wasn't sure what it meant, but she felt it was something important. She made sure to quickly grab it and place it inside of her bag. She then exited the room, closing the door behind her.
You do want to have fun, don't you?
Came the cheerful voice that echoed through the hallway once again. Pinky ignored it for the moment, opening the door across from the first one. Inside the door, she saw an interrogation room. One she would have seen at the local authorities when she was little.
Can't you see she's been through a lot?
The ghostly image of her mother told a ghostly police cult as she hugged her pink daughter.
Your questions are upsetting her.
The pink filly was shaking in her mother's arms.
I apologize profusely. We're not trying to scare her, but we need to know what happened.
You need to give my daughter time. This has been a tough time for all of us.
We understand, and you have our condolences, but we need to know the details. Once we do, we can bring this whole affair to an end quickly.
Oh, come on.
The images faded from the room once more, leaving behind a pink tile on the interrogation table. It was another scene that didn't exist in her memories. This one confused her more than the last one, not knowing what reason she would have to be in an interrogation room like that. She examined the tile, seeing that it had the picture of a bird on it. She quickly placed it inside of her bag before exiting this room as well.
Oh, you're going to make me wait, aren't you?
The chipper Pinkie Pie voice echoed in the hallway, sounding disappointed. Pinkie softly shook her head. The voice of that other Pinkie was unsettling to her. Hearing herself talk without it being her just felt unnatural. She carefully walked to the next door, opening it and stepping inside. This time, she saw her bedroom from the farm. 3 beds filled the room, one for each of them.
Come on, sis. You need to get some sleep. It's getting late.
The ghostly image of her older sister Octavia was trying to comfort the young pink filly.
Still
Her
not
sister
even used to
hugged her
that.
tightly.
I know you're having a hard time, but I'm here. You know I won't let anything happen to you.
The two of them embraced as the images faded once more. On the bed sat a red tile with the picture of a snake on it. Pinkie wiped away a tear that had begun to form at the edge of her eye. She didn't know why these emotions were welling up inside of her. The images were too real to not be true. But why couldn't she remember them? She carefully placed the red tile in her bag before exiting the room.
Come on! I prepared a party for you and everything!
Pinkie shook her head softly. She had to see what was in this other door now. That other Pinkie could wait. She opened the final door on the sides of the hallway, stepping into a room that had its walls painted like the sky. The ground was covered in sand and rocks. It looked like the outside of the rock farm.
Lots of memories coming back to her, huh?
So, you're sure this is what you want?
Her ghostly father asked once again.
Yeah, it is. I don't think I should stay here anymore.
I understand.
Her mother commented, standing next to her father.
Just please be careful out there. I know you'll have Octavia with you.
Are you sure you guys don't want to come? I don't know if I'll be coming back either.
I was left this farm by my father. I can't just leave it now. This farm is my whole life now. Good and bad memories alike. So I hope you can forgive us for not coming with you. Just please be safe.
Damn.
Don't worry, Father. I'll guarantee that nothing shall happen.
We trust you, Octavia.
Her mother nodded, tears in her eyes. The images faded away, and a blue tile with a fish on it sat in the middle of the room.
That was when we left the farm, wasn't it?
Pinky thought, remembering having left the farm with her parents' approval. But she hadn't remembered that conversation before they had left. Yet, she was sure it had happened. All of these images were experiences she'd had when she was younger, yet she had forgotten them.
Why would I have forgotten these memories?
She asked herself, as she walked over to the blue tile before placing it in her bag.
There must be a good reason for why I have forgotten. Maybe that other Pinkie Pie knows.
I gotta lock my door.
You're not very fun, Sadie Pie. If I was told I was being thrown a party, I would just go straight to it.
Pinky walked down the rest of the length of the hallway, reaching the door at the end of it. She pushed the door open and walked inside.
Oh, there you are. I was afraid you'd gotten lost somehow. Which would be weird. How do you get lost in a straight hallway? I'm sure there's a way, but you sure have delayed the party.
The other Pinky stood in the middle
How to
of
get
the
lost
room,
in a straight hallway.
illuminated by a lantern
I'm
that
sure there's a
hung from the
riddle in there
ceiling.
somewhere.
The rest of the room was pitch black, except for the circle of light that showed where she was. Pinky carefully turned off her lantern before storing it back in her bag and then turning to face herself.
Tell me, you know what those images were about, don't you? What? You made me wait for that? That's not very nice. Huh. But I'll forgive you. After all, now that you're here, we can have fun together. Please, I want to have fun as much as you do. But I can't enjoy myself until I find some answers. What happened to Ponyville? Why are there monsters? Why am I seeing the images I'm seeing? I want nothing more than to go back to throwing parties and hanging out with my friends. But I can't. Not so long as all these questions are eating me up inside.
The other Pinky stopped bouncing and just seemed to frown.
You shouldn't have
Fine.
used those specific
I see
words.
how it is. I guess I'll just have to remove that sadness from you, Sadie Pie.
Oh my god.
Pinky blinked in confusion. She had no idea what the other Pinky meant, but she hadn't answered any of her burning questions.
I got it with the siren. What is
Her
that?
thoughts were stopped as her heart sunk. Her ears could hear the siren going off. The light in the room was dimming, slowly turning it pitch black.
Oh no. Oh no, 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 no.
She began to panic as the light faded completely. She tried to brace herself for anything. The world was changing. She could feel it shifting under her hooves, As the siren began to die out, the lantern began to flicker back to life, re-illuminating the spot the other Pinky was standing. The ground around them had turned into the
siren is a
rotting,
thing from the game, I don't know
floor
what it
that had
does.
appeared the first time she had heard the siren. The other Pinkie Pie was still standing where she had been. The only difference now was that she was wearing a strange dress with wings.
You know, playing with myself really might be the most fun I'll ever have. I'll have to make it last, but all things do come to an end.
Pinkie stared at the outfit, beginning to notice details about it she wished she hadn't. The wings on the back, 6 in total, were each a different color and were crudely stitched on. Around her neck was a necklace with multiple unicorn horns dangling from it. The cloth her dress was made out of looked like a patchwork quilt made of leather. Each square of the dress had a different cutie mark on it. The other Pinky noticed her gaping stare.
Oh, do you like my dress?
She angled her body to show it off better.
I'm so glad you like it. I worked very hard to make it. It wasn't easy getting everything to be so intact. Ponies really like to squirm, you know. I'm quite proud of how it came out, too. But I must admit, I see something I can add to it that would make it even better.
The lantern grew brighter, illuminating more of the room, revealing a table that had been hiding in the darkness. The other Pinky turned and walked towards the table, reaching into a medical bag that was placed on top of it. From the bag, she pulled out a large, sharp butcher's knife.
Now, be a good pony and hold still, will you? I don't want to mess up that beautiful cutie mark of yours.
The other Pinky said before putting the butcher's knife in her mouth. Pinky's heart felt like it had stopped. She couldn't even comprehend everything that this other Pinky was saying, but it was very clear that the other Pinky wasn't going to give her a chance. The other Pinky began to charge full gallop at her, aiming for her legs. She jumped out of the way as the knife came close to cutting deep into her. She tried to back away from the other Pinky into the darkness when she hit something hard. She looked behind her, and as if following her eyes, the lantern hanging from the ceiling glowed brighter, revealing the entire room to her. She had run into the dried remains of a pony hanging from the ceiling by a butcher's hook. She jumped away, not wanting to even touch it, as her eyes quickly began to see the decorations of the room. She felt her stomach reach her throat.
Wings and
Pony
horns
bodies
and
hung
skulls.
from several parts of the room. Their
Yep.
bodies dried, and caked pools of blood lay underneath them. Skulls decorated the walls, while the furniture was made up of bones and skin.
Yeah.
Balloons floated that were dyed with blood. Streamers and ribbons had been given the same treatment. Piles of body parts and organs lay stacked in the corners of the room. On the table with the medical bag, appearing from the darkness that had hid it before, was a plate adorned with 4 folds surrounding it, with a pile of cupcakes in the center of the plate. Her ears twitched as she heard the galloping of hooves and jumped into the air, as the sound of a blade being swung struck the body she had run into. Pinky ran away from the twisted version of herself, panting heavily as she galloped to the other side of the room. She turned around, watching as the other her pulled the knife out of the body.
Sadie Pie, this isn't any fun if you just keep running. I admire you, though. You have the will to fight. I like that in a pony.
How about no?
The other Pinky had every intention of killing her, and not quickly. It was obvious she wanted to make it a slow, painful process. The other Pinky was charging again. She could dodge it from this distance, though. She jumped out of the way, avoiding Pinky. She cried out as a searing pain sailed across her right leg. She stumbled away as she looked at the other Pinky, blood dripping from the end of the butcher's knife. The other Pinky had tilted her head and changed her direction when she had dodged. The knife had cut deeply into her leg. She could feel the blood trickling down. With a playful hoof stomp, the other Pinky broke into another charge straight at her. She mustered all her strength to jump away again. She let out another painful cry as a gash cut down her back leg, causing her to trip and collapse on the ground. Her leg twitched in pain as the gash reached diagonally down half her leg. She was severely bleeding now. The other Pinky was able to maneuver too well for her to dodge. The attacks had all but immobilized her movement now.
I give you an A for effort, but a C for the execution. That gives you a good round B. I hope you won't completely give up once you lose your legs, though. I know it'll be tough, but keep on fighting.
She turned her head to watch the other Pinky put the knife back in her mouth. She had come up to her from behind and was raising her head. She was going to bring the knife down, right into her leg. She pulled her leg back in as the other Pinky began to throw her head down to chop the leg off. Pinky bucked the leg with all her might into the other Pinky's jaw. A loud crack sounded through the room as Pinky felt the body of the other Pinky fly backwards away from her. She heard a loud thud, followed by the clanging of the knife hitting the hard ground. She panted in pain, trying not to focus too much on her bleeding legs. She turned her head weakly to look in the direction the other Pinky had flown. The other Pinky groaned, having landed on her back. She rolled over, lying on the ground as her head wobbled. Her mouth was bleeding severely. Bits of teeth and chunks of blood flying out. She panted as best she could through the blood oozing out of her mouth, turning to look at the Pinky she had attacked.
Knife. Try.
She looked pained as she tried to speak, but she slowly got to her wobbly hooves. Pinky slowly got to her hooves as well. Putting weight on her injured legs made her body cry out in pain for relief, but she did her best to silence the cries.
You.
The other Pinky gripped the butcher's knife as best as she could with her hoof, dragging it along the ground as she began to walk towards Pinky.
Jesus.
Pinky took in sharp breaths of air as she concentrated on the vile pink mare before her. The other Pinky began to pick up the pace before going out into a full-on run straight for Pinky. She seemed groggy, but determined to bring that knife down into Pinky's flesh. Pinky had aimed the uninjured half of her body at the other Pinky, bringing her hind hoof up once more. The butcher's knife was raised into the air, sparks flying as it had scraped along the ground. The frantic rush of the other Pinky was closing in, ready to strike down. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still, right on the edge of death. Two forces that never should have met collided. The butcher's knife flew through the air, impaling itself into the ground. Pinky's hind leg had struck straight into its victim's throat. The other Pinky's eyes shrunk. Her windpipe was crushed. Her body betrayed itself. Her whole being shifted out from under the power of the kick, and hitting the ground with a hard thud. That Pinky jerked and twitched on the ground as it tried with all its might to get air from its broken windpipe, only to be filled with blood that poured freely from the neck. The body finally stopped squirming as life escaped it. She stared at the corpse that lay before her. She saw herself dead, killed by her own hoof. She seemed to be numb to the pain that was trying to course through her body, her mind beginning to fall into a haze from the amount of blood she was losing down her legs. It seemed insignificant at the moment. All she could do was stare numbly at the lifeless body before her. Nothing else seemed to even exist in the world. However, her mind finally began to receive the signals her body was sending. She needed medical attention. Her legs became shaky as she finally began to take her first step. She limped, putting as little pressure on her injured legs as possible, over to the medical bag. She carefully pried it open, looking inside. There were many sharp instruments, scalpels, syringes filled with a strange liquid, even a saw for cutting bones. She saw a roll of gauze bandages. She carefully grabbed it, pulling it out of the bag. She rolled the length of it before carefully but tightly wrapping it around her wounds. She wrapped slowly but surely, wrapping up the large cut on her hind leg, then the smaller cut on her front leg. The bandages quickly soaked with blood, but they would seal her wounds for the time being. She placed the remaining gauze inside of her bag and then turned towards the exit. She slowly limped her way back into the grimy hallway, walking past the steel doors. She carefully began to climb the stairs, her wounds slipping once or twice due to the grime that had grown all over them. The climb was slow. Her body ached with pain and exhaustion, but she made it to the top. She slowly walked across the rotting floor of Sugar Cube Corner, heading straight to one of the grime-covered counters. In a dry spot on the counter sat a brown bottle. The label of it called it a health drink. Pinky's dulled mind pulled the cap of it off with her mouth, before taking it and drinking the whole thing. The drink tasted like a mix of bitter herbs and strawberries for flavor. It was a lot like drinking medicine, but her body was grateful to have the liquid inside of her. She placed the empty bottle back down on the counter, and slowly trudged to the middle of Sugar Cube Corner. She laid down, panting heavily, as the haze of her mind finally came to a stop, as she went into an uncomfortable sleep.
Oh my god. Wow. Oh, Jesus, that was so intense. That was really intense. And graphic. Oh my god, was it graphic. Ugh. Oh. I don't know what to say. I've already said what I've wanted to say over the past few parts. Pinky is going through some shit, and I have to suffer with her because I have to do this freaking reaction. I don't have to do it. I don't have to do it. It's just that you guys would really like it if I finished it off. And I completely understand that. But my goodness. I'm just here listening to the story and suffering. I don't know what the hell is going to happen now. I don't know how the story's going to end. I don't know how. I don't know. I really don't. I'm gonna go right to the next part. Why was that unhitched? Anyways, I'm gonna lock my door, cause goddamn. Second time in a row that's happened. Come on, man. Why haven't I learned at this point that my family likes to barge in on me? Anyways, I am going to leave it here. I will see all of you in part 5, and then there's another part after that called The Truth. So stay tuned for that. That will be the final part. But technically speaking, chapter 5 is it, but there is an epilogue. Is that what it was? Epilogue? It's called The Truth. I don't know. It's just it comes after chapter 5, but it's like really short. So I'm assuming it's an epilogue. If I'm remembering that correctly, it's epilogue. Someone corrected me, and then I completely forgot. Anyways, you know what I mean. Stay tuned for that. I will see you all very soon. Goodbye, everybody.